Picture going 2 days without food. Yesterday, you mapped out a herd's exact location using their footprints, needing only to reach them. Suddenly, a heavy, wind-driven downpour strikes, pouring non-stop all day, all night, and into the next morning. Just like that, hunting becomes impossible. The mud has completely erased the tracks. Navigating the rocky, wet terrain barefoot is too risky. A twisted ankle out here is a death sentence. To make matters worse, the nearby river is rising, and your campfire, your sole source of warmth, safety from predators, and survival is starting to fade. This isn't boredom, you are trapped. For most of human history, rain wasn't an inconvenience, it was a survival crisis. Yet, how our ancestors navigated these storms might be more crucial than what they did on clear days. Contrast that with today, where we simply shut the window, make coffee, grab a blanket, and stream Netflix. You sink into the couch, finding a comfortable spot to relax. To you, rain is just a soothing background noise that puts you to sleep before your show even ends. 50,000 years ago, that exact same rain could kill a human in 3 different ways before the storm even passed. The first threat is cold. A wet human loses body heat 25 times faster than a dry one. Lacking clothing and waterproof shelter, a prolonged storm below 50 degrees Fahrenheit can trigger hypothermia within hours. Most environments our ancestors inhabited reached these cold temperatures at night, even high elevation areas of Africa during the wet season. The second danger is flooding. Ancient homes, like caves and rock shelters, were usually located near rivers or hill bases, making them targets for sudden flash floods. Archaeologists have discovered flood sediment layers inside these shelters, proving water invaded while people lived there. Some layers are so thick that the caves were permanently abandoned. The third threat, and perhaps the worst, is predators. Storms drove wild animals to seek shelter too, sometimes bringing them into the exact same caves as humans. In South African cave sites, researchers have uncovered human and large cat remains in the same layers, with some human skulls bearing puncture wounds that match leopard teeth. Rain did more than cause discomfort. It compressed the world, forcing humans, predators, and prey into the same tight, dry shelters at the exact same time. In this high-stakes environment, one task was more critical than any other: keeping the fire alive. And here is why that was so terrifying. Before roughly 40,000 years ago, we aren't sure how reliably humans could make fire from scratch. Yet, evidence of controlled fire goes back at least 400,000 years at Kusum Cave in Israel, and possibly 1,000,000 years at South Africa's Wonderwork Cave. But controlling an existing fire and starting one from scratch are entirely different skills. For most of history, most people likely couldn't do the latter. If your fire died, you couldn't easily relight it. Instead, you'd have to transport a live ember from elsewhere, a practice some groups actually relied on. Embers were transported wrapped in green leaves or packed inside a woody mushroom called tinder fungus, which acted like a biological lighter by smoldering safely for hours. We know this wasn't guesswork. When archaeologists discovered Ötzi the Iceman, the 5,300-year-old frozen man preserved in the Alps, his belt pouch contained a full fire kit: tinder fungus, flint, pyrite for sparks, and backup plant tinder. Even 5,000 years ago, preventing fire loss was vital enough to warrant specialized gear. When rain fell, protecting the fire took priority over personal shelter. You had to move it deeper into the cave, shield it with hides or brush, and feed it precisely. For dry fuel, you gathered dead lower branches from coniferous trees, which the canopy kept dry. To find dry wood, you had to split open wet logs. For kindling, you used birch bark, which contains a chemical called betulin that burns even when wet. In a storm, one person's entire job was simply sitting by the fire for hours, shielding, feeding, and keeping it alive. The fire was everything: warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the hub of all social life. Letting it die wasn't just negligent. It was potentially fatal for everyone. So, the fire is lit and you are mostly dry, but you're still trapped. What do you do next? You craft. The archaeological record proves caves were ancient workshops, packed with manufacturing evidence. We find stone tools at every stage of production, surrounded by piles of flaking debris, the tiny stone chips discarded during shaping. These remnants are concentrated in specific spots, showing exactly where someone sat, working for hours near the fire. It went beyond stone tools. At South Africa's Blombos Cave, archaeologists discovered a 100,000-year-old ochre workshop. Inside were abalone shell mixing bowls, powdered ochre, and bone tools for stirring and applying it. This wasn't basic survival, it was systematic production. Someone sat in that shelter, likely while it poured outside, intentionally manufacturing pigment. Then we find bone needles, emerging roughly 61,000 years ago in South Africa before spreading to Europe and Asia. These delicate, precise tools feature tiny, drilled eyes. Crafting something so intricate wasn't done on the run. It required quiet stillness, intense focus, and hours of dedicated time. Rainy days provided that needed time. Remarkably, at a French Neanderthal site called Abri du Maras, archaeologists discovered a tiny fragment of twisted plant fiber string, dating back roughly 52,000 years, the oldest direct evidence of string ever found. In Germany's Holyfels cave, researchers uncovered a 35,000-year-old mammoth ivory tool. Featuring 4 holes and spiral grooves, it was designed specifically for twisting plant fibers into rope. Someone sat in that cave to carve this dedicated rope-making machine, even though making rope itself is a slow, repetitive process, requiring great patience. It is the ideal bad weather task. Rope revolutionized everything, enabling humans to bind items, build better shelters, make traps and snares, and secure tools to handles. A vast amount of human technology relies on string, which was likely invented by someone stuck indoors waiting for the rain to clear. Beyond tools and rope, people also focused on making their shelters livable. At South Africa's Sibudu cave, archaeologists uncovered an unexpected 77,000-year-old discovery: actual bedding. These were layers of sedges, rushes, and grasses, carefully arranged as sleeping mats. The top layers featured Cape laurel leaves, a natural insect repellent. This wasn't mere survival. Someone was making the cave a comfortable home. They even periodically burned and replaced the bedding to keep it clean. 77,000 years ago, humans were already practicing pest control. But then comes an unexpected turn. Tools, rope, and bedding were practical, but what followed was entirely different: art. Southern France's Chauvet Cave features 36,000-year-old paintings of lions, horses, rhinos, and bears, rendered with an observant skill that continues to astound viewers today. Mastering anatomy, movement, and perspective, these creators drew animals mid-stride, with tensed muscles and turning heads. Rather than doodles, these were memories captured by firelight deep underground after thousands of hours of observation. This artistry extends far beyond Chauvet to Lascaux, Altamira, and Indonesia's Sulawesi, where art dating back at least 45,000 years stands as the world's oldest known figurative art. But here is what makes this fascinating. These paintings aren't located near the sheltered cave entrances. Instead, they lie deep inside, sometimes hundreds of meters down, through narrow passages and chambers you had to crawl to reach. Someone carried animal fat lamps into absolute darkness just to paint. Consider that for a moment. No one does this when the weather is ideal and hunting is good. You do it when you're trapped indoors by 2 days of rain, with every tool already sharpened, leaving nothing left to do but venture deep into the dark to create. We can't prove cave art was purely a rainy day activity, but the logic holds. Human prehistory's greatest creative leap occurred exactly where people were trapped indoors for long stretches. This points to something even bigger. Rain didn't just spark art, it may have birthed human culture itself. Consider this. What happens when 15 to 30 people are stuck in a confined space for days with nothing to do? You talk, listen, and share information. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner published a study comparing daytime and nighttime fireside conversations among the Yuhuwansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. By day, they discussed practicalities like land rights, resources, and grievances. At night, however, over 80% of their fireside conversations shifted to stories, songs, and ceremonies. The firelight changed the dialogue, softening faces, easing tension, and encouraging everyone to open up. More than just warmth, the campfire was the original social network. The things shared weren't small talk, they were survival. Where summer water sources dry up, which plants are safe to eat, where the best flint lies, and how to track specific animals. That wasn't gossip. This was vital knowledge, passed between minds through speech. Yet, beyond the practical lay something else: myths, stories, and explanations of where rain comes from and where it goes. Every ancient culture has rain mythology. Someone had to invent those legends, likely while sheltering in the exact weather they were trying to explain. This highlights the immense power of storytelling. The oldest oral traditions, validated by geological records, are Australian Aboriginal stories describing sea level rises roughly 7,000 years ago. For 7 millennia, these narratives survived solely through people talking to one another. Such deep cultural memory only develops when groups spend vast amounts of time sitting together, repeatedly sharing stories. Rainy days weren't dead time, they were transmission time. They were moments when knowledge passed from elders to youth, skills were demonstrated, and collective memory was reinforced and updated. But here is an overlooked detail. Rain wasn't always a setback. Sometimes it was a massive advantage. Heavy rain softens the ground, creating ideal conditions for tracking. Soft mud preserves deep, clear, detailed prints, revealing exactly which animals passed by, when, how fast they were traveling, and where they went. The finest tracking conditions in the world emerge right after rain stops. Rain also brought vital water. Humans could collect and store it, a practice even early hominins likely understood. Rock depressions that pool clean rainwater are found near nearly all prehistoric campsites, with some deliberately carved deeper to hold more. But rain brought more than water. Mushrooms and specific plants flourish afterward, wet soil makes digging tubers easier, and insects rise to the surface. Rainy periods didn't halt the food supply. They reshaped it entirely. Groups that understood these shifts gained an immense advantage over those that didn't. Termites are an excellent example, swarming across tropical Africa after rain. Offering an incredibly protein-dense food source, they require no tools or weapons. You simply gather them. Today, chimpanzees gorge on these post-storm swarms, and early humans almost certainly did the same on a much larger scale. So, what did ancient humans do during an all-day rain? Everything that mattered. They kept the fire alive, crafted tools for the next hunt, and sewed clothing to stay warm through winter. They twisted the rope that held their shelters together and ground the pigment used to paint animals on cave walls deep underground. They shared the stories that carried survival knowledge across generations. When the rain stopped, they stepped out onto soft ground covered in clear animal tracks and got back to work. Rain didn't slow them down. It prepared them for the future. Every tool, garment, story, and cave painting was born from this downtime, from hours spent sheltering by the fire with nothing to do but think. Boredom didn't exist for them the way it does for us. When you're sheltering in a cave during torrential rain, and survival depends on what you can craft by hand over the next few hours, you don't get bored. You get creative, and that might be the primary reason we're still here.